Do you yearn for travel that involves outdoor adventure and learning? I do. I also have a passion for all things farming and agriculture. I've traveled to exotic jungles to learn about growing chocolate. I even once owned my own organic vegetable and sunflower farm. And now I'm planning my journey back to agriculture. Agritourism, defined as travel that involves some type of agricultural experience. Agritourism is all about entertaining. But the marketing strategist in me knows that, at its core, agritourism is really about educating, and education affects change. My future farm needs to deliver a profound experience to all of its visitors. It needs to educate people about food, health, and climate. Join me to learn from experienced agritourism farmers and entrepreneurs and help me build my future farm strategy. And who knows, maybe one day soon you'll find yourself in a tropical jungle cutting open cacao pods with a machete, or savoring an outdoor plant-to-plate community dinner with 100 guests at a farm in Illinois. So let's tap into the agritourist in you. So everyone should know my good friend Pattie Baker by now, author of Round America with a Duck, and most recently Round Ireland with a Duck. Pattie has become such a dear friend and has encouraged me to continue trusting the journey. And so I have. It was Pattie's inspiration that made me consider WWOOFing, Worldwide Opportunities on Organic Farms. And when I thought about where I want to WWOOF, Italy just popped into my mind. So that is where I put my energy, researching farms throughout Italy from the WWOOF Italy website, and ultimately connecting with Gianfranco and Nino from Orto in Festa in Marsala, Sicily. Like everything in life, we can't know whether our WWOOFing selections will turn out the way we imagine in our minds. Obviously, we end up painting a certain picture in our minds of farming in Sicily. There is always so much to consider when selecting a WWOOFing destination. And at some point, you just have to take that leap of faith and go for it. And that is basically what I did during my WWOOFing journey. Upon returning, Pattie couldn't wait to chat with me about my adventure in Sicily. I recorded our conversation, which basically was her interviewing me about my WWOOFing experience. I really loved her questions, and I thought it would be a great opportunity for people to hear about my experience from a slightly different perspective. Enjoy my conversation with a true inspiration, Pattie Baker. So, Missy.
How are you? Oh, you did it. Oh my gosh, big hugs. Big hugs. You have to be so proud of yourself. You have to be so proud of yourself.
Well, yes, I am. And like, I think I wimped out a bit. Okay. I'll explain. Okay. My first time obviously flying, I've flown I think I've flown to Hawaii, which is not a short trip, but it was a long journey, and the time difference, losing 6 hours wasn't fun. But I saw my friend Helen the first day. She picked me up at the airport, and we spent the first 2 days together kind of, and it was really cool because the first day the second day I was there, we went to this farm. His name was Rossellini, and he actually is growing all these exotic tropical fruits in Sicily, a lot that don't grow in Sicily.
Right, but because of
including coffee. But
coffee.
Climate change allowed him to do this. And of course, I did ask him, are you growing cacao? And he actually did try to grow cacao, but they did have a frost and it died.
Okay.
He was like on a mission to do that. And then after this farm tour, which, you eat your way through the farm tour, which was like, it was my delight, Then we went into this kitchen. He has like a farm stand, and then there's this kitchen, and they had this 3-course Italian meal and wine and music and, dancing. And it was amazing. Like, it was just so
And this was day one?
It was technically day 2.
Or day 2? I mean, so here you are, like, just dropped into this other world.
Yes, literally.
And completely, like, the daydream has become the reality.
My friend Helen was translating for me because everyone spoke Italian, and these farmers in particular did not speak English. But it just didn't matter. Like, it was just really, I was like totally in the moment in their, like, just experiencing their culture and their ability to connect and their ability to be in the moments they are there without having all the distraction. I think that was the biggest message the whole time. And it's the thing that I felt when I went to Central America and on my cacao trips and all these. I always feel like outside of America, people have this ability to be with each other and really be with each other and really connect and listen and talk and enjoy the food that they're eating. Not, not this rush, not, like, I don't know. It just, we're missing out on that in America. And the people that know how to do that, I just think your life is so much more.
Well, you're the person who knows how to do that. That's what you're working on. That's why you're working on this agritourism. That's why you're working on these connective events, the chocolate tastings, all these kinds of things. Like, that's where your heart has been going.
I know.
Well, and people are starving for it.
I know. That was one of the things in an interview I did with Locavore Farm. For some reason, I'm forgetting her name, and I apologize. She's one of my early interviews, and she does the 100-person farm to table dinners, like south of Chicago. And the one thing I'll never forget her saying this is she did a lot. She lived in other countries as a kid, and she traveled a lot. And she always remembered that food brought people together. Food was about connection. It wasn't just about the meal. It was about connecting. And she wanted to bring that back to America when she came back to live here. And that always stayed with me because that's what it is about, and that's, I felt, so I enjoyed that meal. And then that evening, actually, right after that meal, Helen and her husband Vincenzo drove me down to the farm. And Marsala, like, they're in Terracini, which is right outside of Palermo. And Marsala is like an hour south on the coast, on the west coast. Yeah. And he's literally, when we say, it's almost like an urban farm more than anything, because it's literally, it's kind of in the city still, but outside the historic part of the city. So when we get there, and everything's gated, and like outside of the US, it's kind of like the weird thing. I know, like, when I even went to Costa Rica, everything's gated, and I'm always like, is there that much crime? But it's like a thing. Like, in America, we don't do that as much. Yeah, we have gated communities, but I'm talking about the houses are all gated,
right?
Big gates, and you have to open them up, and it's this whole process to get in and out. You almost feel like, it's like here we can kind of go walk and take a walk, or you can take your bike out and stuff. And it's a process to do that there. And right next door, this was interesting, right next door to John Franco's place, literally they're building this food store, like, a Whole Foods type, like a food store, whatever the name was there. And at first we were talking about that a little, because then he has his property, and it's his mom's house. It was his grandfather's house. It was an old vineyard, actually, from Marsala wine. And then his property, like, he has farmland, it goes back, and then you have to follow a path, and then there's another plot. Like, he has all these plots, but it's very urban, because you have all these kind of buildings around you. But the store next door, I said, John Franco, I said, it's actually a really good opportunity, because those people, they're going to be marketing to get people to come to the grocery shopping, but they won't, you have the fresh farm vegetables right next door. I said, so you should be putting out a sign, like a sign that says what you're doing. And then people can come get their farm fresh vegetables and pick them right at your farm. And then they can go get everything else at the supermarket. Because the supermarket has everything else, and you will never have what the supermarket has. I said, so it might be a really good marketing opportunity for you.
Right.
Because at first he's like, he wasn't thinking of it that way. And I'm like, no, you have to think of it that way. So I'm like, work on your sign, because I know they need permits and all that. I'm like, work on your sign. But I got to say, the second they opened the gate, it was like I was home to a family. Like, I was home, I'm home, his mom didn't speak a word of English. She's 82, Antonia, but she was the nicest lady on this planet. I fell in love with them. John Franco was one of the kindest people, the most giving people I've ever met, And so I spent the first night, so basically I had dinner with them, and that's the one thing, they eat so late. I'm not used to that. I'm an early eater. So my schedule was completely off while I was there. Um, and lunch is usually 1 to 2:30 and dinner is usually around 9. So I'm like, he actually
Yeah.
adjusted it a little bit for me, or I told him like I sometimes I would eat with them, but I would have like a nibble, because it was like lunch was plenty, like it's, there was a lot.
Right. Yeah, I'm like ready for my gummy vitamin at that time.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, it's not good for digestion, honestly, especially at my age. Um, so the first night, so the one thing, and this is what I shared with you that was hard was, which, as woofing, this is my first time woofing. So I obviously took everything you said into account, and you know, you do your research, you feel like as you talk to people, you kind of learn what to ask and stuff. But there's always, you forget,
Uh,
and I didn't realize, that, in America, less people smoke and it's harder to smoke because you have, everything's designated areas. And, as a smoker, it's difficult. There, it's very common to smoke, and a lot of people smoke there. A lot of times they're rolling their own cigarettes and stuff, so they're not buying the really bad ones. But it's just, I didn't realize, and I didn't ask the question, and I didn't, if it was in the profile, I didn't even see it because I wasn't focused on it. And so John Franco smokes. He's the healthiest person otherwise, and yet, I'm like, and he also had some other woofers there from Germany who smoked. So it wasn't about like, I never would ask someone not to smoke in their own home. And so the first night, although I was in a separate room, it just, you can smell it. And also it's interesting, they wake up and they're coughing, and I'm like, that's
right.
from the smoke, and I felt bad. I was just like, but I kind of was like, okay, can I tolerate this? And then Patty, you were in my brain, and Patty said, do not, like, you were like, do not compromise on stuff, like, especially things that impact your health or your wellness. And that, my dad used to smoke when I was really young, even out of the house, but I always felt when I was around the smoke, my lungs would stay in my lungs. And also when I was younger and we'd go out to bars, you were smoking bars. So I would always come out smelling and feeling like an ashtray.
Right.
And I felt that feeling when I woke up in the morning, and I'm like, no, I can't do this. So I did some research online to see if I could find, I said, you know what? His mom's house was an option, but I didn't want to inconvenience her. Plus we didn't speak this. I just was like, I didn't know her that well yet. And I just felt like it was an inconvenience, like having someone in her home. I mean, she's right there. It's kind of it's like a compound almost. So I did some research quick, and I found a few places in downtown Marsala, which was literally a 5-minute drive away. And it was in the historic part. And I figured, it might be a good way for me to experience the city, even though I won't be there a lot, but just to be part of it. And but yet, and have my own privacy, and not be around the smoke, especially at night. And so the next day we were doing olive harvesting, and I pulled John Franco aside, and I told him, and I knew he was going to be really upset, and he was like, he felt so bad, and he's like, I won't smoke in the house. And I'm like, no, like I would never, like I said, I said, John Franco, I'm not going to ask you to do that. Plus you have guests there that do smoke also. And it's like, you're all going to change habits. Plus it's there, it's inherent in the house. It's there, you can't escape it. And I'm not judging it. I just can't, I told him, for my health, I can't be around it, and then he finally was okay with it, but felt really bad. And I said, but as long as like, can you help me get to and from, and Nino, his business partner, was like, no problem, I can pick you up and one of us can drive you home. And I said, I even offered, I'll take a cab, but they're not as prevalent as it's not like I can call an Uber. So, but it worked out. It actually worked out really well. But that night when I came back, before I did check into the place, his mom like pulled me in the house, without speaking English, and she's like, you could stay here, you could stay here. But I declined, because
Mhm.
I just didn't want to inconvenience anyone. And like I said, it was nice to be in the city. So we went and
But look at what you said. I mean, what you did was you pivoted.
yeah,
So you didn't wimp out. You pivoted, and you pivoted on the fly.
yeah.
And that's like a really advanced solo travel skill, you know. I mean, to be able to, and to have been able to recognize your needs so early in the journey, to quickly evaluate, to first of all try, and then to quickly evaluate your options, and then to do it graciously, and to do it in a way that really enhanced your experience and made it your own. You know, everyone's journey is different, and the mix of things that you got out of that stay is different than someone else would have gotten out of that stay. And there's no judgment on it, you
Well,
know.
it was good too because a woman from Australia came, a young woman from Australia, and she came the next day actually. And so she stayed in the bedroom and she was okay. She had been, honestly, this is her second year of woofing.
Wow.
She's an attorney for 6 years in Australia, and she is trying to make a career shift. So she started woofing and she was in France, but then she spent a lot of time in Italy, all parts of Italy, and a lot of vineyard work and stuff like that. And I loved her. Her name was Rosalie. I called her Rose. And so she was there. So it actually worked out. It worked out
Right.
better. And also,
Yeah.
I'm a little older. There's certain things like I am not one of those set in their ways people. I can be very, I mean, the places I stayed from a cacao, like chocolate place,
Mhm.
chocolate, some of those, and I also went to Mexico on a trip, and I was staying in hostels. So I've been through situations, but I just, as you get older, just having that privacy at certain times of the day and just that
Mhm.
downtime
Mhm.
is just appreciated.
Well, that's the fun part too, is that kind of if you are in tune with your feelings, which you are, to be able to say, oh, okay, what am I feeling? And why am I feeling this way? And especially if it's different than maybe you felt when you were younger, or maybe you felt when you were somewhere else. And like, okay, something's going on here that has me a little dysregulated. I'm not really sure what it is. Let me think about it, identify it, and then pivot and find a solution for it. And then, again, the variety of things that we do accept and put up with, and sometimes even thoroughly enjoy, is still really wide. Like you have no problem doing this and this and this and this and this, but you really value this,
Yeah. No,
and
it's
that, yeah,
definitely educational. Like
yeah.
definitely
Well, it sounds like you couldn't walk the way you like to walk.
no.
So
Honestly,
that, like,
no
that took
time either.
away. I'm sorry?
There was no time either though.
Right. And
I
so
would
it's like night, it's dark, it's late by the time you're leaving dinner, so you didn't have what, that time that you normally have in your day to have your decompression time.
no,
So
I
that became even more important.
yes. That was, I would have tried. John Franco was going to help me figure out a path from his place. There, I could have done. But the thing was, when I really looked at, see, I didn't realize how far I was from Helen's. So I knew, okay, so I was coming into Helen's. I was coming to his Sunday night.
Mhm.
And then I was going to originally work till Friday, go back to Helen's for the weekend, and then come back for the last 2 days. And he was going to drive me to the airport. But I was like, this is ridiculous. There's so many back and forth. And he was so busy
Right.
running, like he was running around like all the time. And we were trying to help him all, but he did deliveries, and then he's at this farm, and then there's an olive farm, like, a few miles away from him. And then he's got to bring
Mhm.
all the olives to the oil production place because they can't sit at the farm. They have to go right into
Mhm.
production. So they're fresh. It was exhausting. So I'm like, there is no way. Cause he was like, oh, I'll come pick you up at Helen's and bring you back. I'm like,
Right.
no. I'm like, John Franco, you have work to do. I
Yeah.
said, so I kind of, I knew I was only going to probably be there Monday through Friday, solid work. So I
Mhm.
said, I wanted to make the most out of Monday through Friday. And so I was working full days, and I didn't mind it at all because I
Mhm.
enjoyed every moment of it. So I worked full days. So I was being picked up by 6:15 a.m. in the morning from Nino in the city.
So it was sometimes still dark. And then I was brought to the farm. He would be doing all his animal feeding and all the things, and we would have a quick breakfast, on the fly type of thing, get the truck set up, go do whatever we were doing. If we were at the farm, we'd have lunch there, but a lot of times we weren't. So we'd bring lunch with us. And it was a few times it was funny. Like we'd be pulling out and I'd open the gate for John Franco and I'd be like, okay, let's do a checklist because he'd always forget something. I'm like, do you have this? Do you have this? I'm like, you have lunch?
Yeah.
Oh, shoot. So he'd stop the car and have to run back. And lunch, was sitting on the bench or whatever. And then by the time we got back, sometimes I'd stay for dinner. So dinner's at 8 or 9 o'clock. And then I wouldn't be home till 10, 11.
Right.
So I'm leaving at 6:15, getting up at 5:30, leaving at 6:15, not back till 10. I was exhausted. But it's
it's a good exhaustion. Well, you kept saying in your podcast, you kept using the word got to. I got to do this and I got to do that. And that's always the sign that, that you're enjoying what you're doing rather than I have to.
No,
but you kept saying that over and over again. I got to go to different farms and I got to see how the olives become olive oil.
Good observation. That is a really good.
Yeah, and your video is beautiful. The one that you just posted on Instagram of the olive production. And, I know for me growing up in the 60s and 70s with Sesame Street, and they always had those production videos. Yeah, right. We have those videos with, the crayon factory and this factory. And I'm such a sucker for a factory with production lines.
It's just amazing.
Yeah, it was really beautiful. And how you described it as spicy in your podcast. I could taste it from your description.
It is actually. Let me just hold on. Let me grab something. I'm going to show you something. This is my oil. Actually, it's in a.
Look at the color. It's so beautiful.
I had to find. It's actually a little greener than this. This bottle is actually a little gray. I had to find. They gave me a 5-liter tin, and they wanted to give me 10 liters because they give shares to anyone who volunteers. And I'm like, the 5-liter tin I barely could carry back with all my stuff, and so you can't bring. That would have collapsed. That would have sucked in on a plane and been all over everything. So I had to find, bottles that will make it and safely, so this is a thick bottle. So I brought 2 of these back and I left the rest with Helen and her family. And he has 5 more liters. So Helen is actually, she wants a tour. She never got to do a tour of his farm. So they're connected. So she can go back and hopefully indulge in the extra 5 liters. He said he would ship it to me, but I'm like, that's probably
so expensive,
more than, and you know what? I'd rather go back.
Right.
And get
right. But can you see how, isn't it so interesting? Well, I have a few questions for you about WWOOFing. So it sounds like you firstly had an astounding, first WWOOFing experience. And was it surprising to you how quickly you could become part of the farm?
Oh man, yes. I mean, well, was that surprising to me? See, because I ran a farm, so I know when I pulled people in, I saw how for me, it was not even just part of the farm. It was part
of the family. Mm-hmm.
I just felt with that first day when I sat down, they offered me coffee. I'm not a coffee drinker, but then they offered me tea and then they offered me food. You're just part of the family there. Like even when Rose came, I saw how, and this other guy from Germany came, and whoever was there became part of the family.
It's like now it's us, and now a new person comes, and now this is the unit, and then we just sort of just keep shifting and adapting to each person. Yeah.
One of my favorite nights, well, the last night I was there when I actually did the interview with them, they were so nervous to do that interview, by the way. And why they were nervous is because of their English. And I was like, first of all, I thought their English was amazing.
It was very good.
And you just did an interview in English.
Right. I was thinking of that as I was listening to it. I was like, oh my gosh.
I speak a little bit of Spanish. I've taken it all, in school and everything. I could never do an interview in Spanish. Like and I'm like, you don't understand what you just accomplished. And you can, and then you conveyed so many messages, important life and, health and wellness messages, um, in such a profound way in English, not
Yeah.
your first language. And they all spoke more than like just English and Sicilian. They spoke, Nino speaks Portuguese, and I think Gianfranco spoke French or something, like, so amazing. And
Yeah.
that night, I actually ended up buying pizza for the group because I didn't want him cooking. And I wanted also us to have time for the podcast. And I knew the only way I had to buy the time because
Right.
otherwise he's cooking for everyone. So I'm like, and when they cook, they cook. They don't just like, boil pasta. They make the sauce from scratch. Like he's taking a vegetable from the farm and creating a sauce out of it and creating soups. And it's not something, they're simple meals, but there's a lot of love and time put into it. So I was like, okay, and I knew everyone, I wanted to taste pizza. I wanted to taste pizza from Italy, so in Sicily. So we went and got pizza, and then they got wine, because I said, get some really good wine, something that I would not taste here. So we had an amazing evening before that podcast, and I think they needed a few drinks anyway to calm them down. But oh my God, the pizza was delicious. And it was really cool because I don't eat cheese and I would have tried it there, but they ordered like this special pie that didn't have cheese and it had like onions and olives, and the sauce was just out of this world, and the bread, oh my God. I didn't need, like, I was going to take a piece with cheese, but I didn't even need it after that. It was so delicious. And
Yeah, you did such a good job with that. And your questions were quite complicated. You didn't, I mean, they clearly understood English beautifully. And their answers were lovely and charming. And the times when they took a breath, or took a beat to find their words just helps me as a listener to be more present.
exactly.
It kind of put me more in the rhythm. I was listening on my bike and it was just, I was on the farm. I was really feeling the farm. It was beautiful to hear their intonations and how they expressed.
Yeah.
And then interesting also, a couple of the questions you asked that were forward thinking. This kind of underscores what you said about being in the moment, because a couple of your questions were like, what's next and what's this and what's that. And those were the ones they stumbled on the most, because it was kind of like, we're kind of in the moment. We have plans, but they're not these big, completely fleshed out plans. And it's hard to answer that question when we're in the middle of an olive harvest right now. So I felt present and grounded when, through the interview. You did a beautiful job as usual.
Yeah, Nino specifically was very nervous about it. And I said, Nino, it's okay if you don't know a word. That's kind of cool, like that you're trying to figure out the English word for something. And it was like, ask Gianfranco, and he did a few times. And I was like, It made it helped, and then you heard the Italian word, so
right.
It just,
no, it was really good. Well, you mentioned the younger woofers. And, I had a number of experiences like that as well. Well, first of all, just to back up a minute to the smoking, as I shared with you on an email, at 11 wolf farms across the United States and Ireland, I never encountered a smoker. Like I never had that situation come up. And so when you mentioned it, I was like, oh my gosh, that's so obviously a question that should be asked that just never crossed my mind. I never asked it.
It's on the profile normally.
Yeah, I guess you're right.
I've seen it, but for some reason, you know what? This thing happened so quickly.
Yeah. And it happens so organically for you too. Yeah. And I know I have myself identified as a non-smoker, but I mean, I just didn't run into that problem at all. So, and I haven't, there's many countries I haven't lived in. So I'm sure it's more prevalent in some, rather than others. So definitely something to keep in mind, as I go forward.
Certain countries, I think.
Yeah.
I found that a lot of people did smoke in Italy. Like it just seemed to be the norm.
Right.
I was laughing with John. I was laughing with them. I'm like, if you ever come to America, you're going to have a hard time smoking here, because it
You have
is.
to go stand out in the alley somewhere, you know.
It's very different,
Yeah.
And the one thing I wanted to you talked about the forward thinking, the being in the moment. I I did end up being it was definitely helping to teach English, which was kind of fun because we were talking about leeks on the farm one day, and I was explaining because I couldn't remember. I was looking at it and I'm like, I can't remember what this is. And I'm like, oh, leeks. And I was like Leeks, and Nina was like, um, then what's where you like leak information? So
Right.
so cute. So we were doing a lot of that where the English language is difficult when it comes to
Right.
the different spelling and
Yeah.
definition. So we had a lot of dialogue around different words. It was fun because we take that for granted, and then
Right.
oh my God, this is difficult. Like
Yeah.
but they knew, like they were picking up on all this, and the questions were actually like amazed me. The other thing, we got into a lot of conversation, not on purpose. This was not my intention. Is naturally I always think about how what they're doing at the farm and kind of listen to what they want to do, and then give my ideas about you should think about this. So we got into a lot of agritourism conversations, and there's such amazing. I mean, John Franco would walk me through that farm, and everything growing had a purpose. And we like one day he was having me taste all this stuff, and I was like listening to him. I'm like, do you ever listen to yourself and think about everything you know? Like so much. And sometimes we don't take a moment to hear everything we know. And I'm like, God, you could be educating people. Like that's a whole stream from this farm, like of things you can bring people here. And I said, you don't even have to do a meal. You can literally walk them through and eat your way through with just the fruit trees and all the vegetables, and have this whole agritourism experience. And so in one conversation, we were chatting at lunch in the olive field one day, and John Franco was like, he said, we were talking about, I think somebody else brought up something with agritourism, and John Franco was like, oh, I'll have to consult with my marketing director about that. I was laughing so hard. And he looked at me. I was like, oh, okay. Like, I guess I assumed a role. It was just cute, though. It just, again, it just was nice. Like there was such an appreciation among everybody for everything they brought to the table.
Yeah, it's nice when you can get recognized for not just your passion, but your professional expertise, as well. Yeah. Well, so back to the young people, I woofed with a number of young folks. I mean, sometimes 40 years between me and them. And I was particularly impressed with, kind of at the sustainable education that folks have gotten, the kinds of experiences they've had, and their hopes and dreams for the future. It made me feel better. So did you have a similar experience with the young folks that you worked with?
Absolutely. I would say some were much younger, like all the way up to young 30s is at least what I think. I know for sure on some of them, but it was very interesting to me. I think they were all on a journey, and they were all on some type of journey, which I was too. Obviously I'm in a different, age range of my journey, and for different reasons and stuff like that. But they were all trying to figure out in some capacity is like a better life, a better way of living. Because like I told you, Rose was an attorney in Australia, and although there were components of being an attorney that she loved, there was a lot she didn't like, and especially being inside and at a desk and stuff. And then it was funny because she was kind of on this journey to figure out her life, and she told me, she goes, she's the oldest, and she has two younger brothers, and her parents always thought that she was gonna follow this traditional path and
Mhm.
her career, and then all of a sudden she turns around. So they were like, "Oh God, what example are you setting for your younger brothers?"
Right.
So she was laughing about that, but I was like, "You're setting an amazing example for them, in a certain way." And then there was a gentleman who was 27. He wasn't woofing, but he's woofed. He's from Marsala. He was an attorney in Milan for 3 years and quit. But he has woofed. When he was younger, he woofed in, I don't know, remember where he said he woofed, but he has woofed. But he said he was now on this journey to figure out what he wants to do with his life now. So he was working with us. He works at the farm sometimes, and he was olive harvesting. His English was really, really good. And it was just, again, they're on this journey. They're trying, they kind of, they tried some of the traditional routes, and it just didn't work. There was the gentleman from Germany, they were escaping cold weather and a better life. They knew they weren't going back, which was interesting. They didn't know where they were going. And I'm like, wow, like I admire their ability to just do that, like to, like
Right.
I always knew I was going back. I know I have a lot of commitments here. So there's the difference, they could do what they were doing. It was just really interesting. I found it to be very inspiring, because they're taking risks that I don't know if I would have, I wouldn't have been encouraged to take that risk at their age. Like nothing against my parents. Like it's a different, but my parents were like, you need to go to school, you need to get a job, you need benefits.
Yeah.
You need
Well, part of the difference is because with the younger folks, they can be on our insurance to 26.
Yes,
that opens up this whole little time period. I mean, even though some of the folks you were woofing with were a little older than that, but that does open up a thought process.
But remember, they're not all Americans, so
right, that's true.
Some of them have insurance no matter what.
Right.
So they have.
So it really does. It comes down to that in a lot of ways, But for the Americans, for instance, I have seen that shift in the young folks where they have 3 years now to try some different types of jobs and to do a little bit of exploring and to just kind of things we just really didn't have choices about. We just didn't.
No,
we needed those benefits. We needed the corporate job. We just did not have the options unless we were funded in a different way. So it is a different.
I tell my kids that all the time, and I said that to my middle daughter who graduated. I was like, "You have a few years to figure this out, so don't silo yourself into a job just because,
Yeah, and even being able to work with smaller companies or nonprofits, kinds of places that wouldn't have been the big benefits packages that we would have sought out when we were younger, the safer jobs. And that gives them the breadth and depth of experience to pursue something when they get near 26 and they know they need to, it just gives them different options moving forward. But did you find, I have found since I've gotten involved with all the woofing and everything else, you fall down the rabbit hole of all the solo travel women in particular, and that's a whole world on social media. And of course, folks are doing completely amazing things. They've been traveling for years. They've built whole digital nomad lives. They're house sitting. I mean, look at all the farm work that we did, and there's people like watching cats all day. So there's lots of choices, and that has been so interesting to me because, especially being in an urban suburban environment, and folks are being like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you did that." And I'm just like, this is nothing compared to what some people are doing. And even from an adventure travel point of view, it feels very adventurous to us. And I'm very proud of what I've been able to do, but it's just no comparison to, because people are riding their bikes around the world, they're climbing mountains, they're doing all kinds of things. So it's not as outside the box or it kind of depends what box you're in. And I feel like by woofing and being on this journey, it's put me in a different box. And this box only has one side to it, and the rest is open.
Yep.
And it's just a very different box with many more options and different role models, in all honesty. Different, and again, it's very much that feeling, especially as an older woman, of, even when we talked, it was like, well, if you can do it, I can do it. It's like, okay. And then you did it. And now you see, and now you're how do you feel now? How do you feel? Like you said, you leave the farm and the farm never leaves you.
No.
That's the joy and the problem, because you long for it, and you long for that feeling.
See, yes, and that is I don't want to call it a problem, okay? But I have to say what it did for me, and what every cacao trip, chocolate trip did for me, and what these trips continue doing for me, is deepening my commitment to wanting to do something in America and bring these values, bring these experiences, bring these ways for people to connect back to America, where it is so needed. It's so needed, especially right now, more than ever before. So it kind of I always come back thinking, okay, how do I do this? What do I do? And I always struggle when I come back because of all the constraints in America and all the things, the challenges that exist here. That I'm not saying there are not challenges to doing these things there and all these other places I've been, but there's just a lot more barriers here. There's land barriers. There's, being able to live here is just, you need certain income sources, and then all the dependencies here, and
But it's also the culture too, because the big thing with Italy and with Ireland is that these are cultures that are land-based, and the land is part of their heart. It is part of their being, and we are the Americans, not the Native Americans. That the post Mayflower folks. That's not a land-based culture. And so those connections are not natural.
No.
And so when we go somewhere where they are natural, it's easy to just sort of melt back into that earth. And so here you have to sort of create from nothing, really.
Yes, you have
to fabricate it in a way.
But I know it's possible, because when I had my farm, it was happening. And so I know it's possible. It's just a matter, of where, when, how. It's funny though, because I got an email today from the Boston farm that I've been working with for over the year now, and things are happening. So we're getting.
What do you see as? Can you share next steps, or is it premature for that?
Well, I don't want to share too much because not everything's finalized, but they basically want someone to come in. I wouldn't be running the farm growing at this point, but I'd be running everything else. From the farm, they have a store, to the CSA, to the UPIC. Like, I'd be running all the customer facing pieces.
Right.
And creating the infrastructure around it, which is actually using my marketing expertise on a farm.
Right.
Have someone who's actually who has a food truck business that uses stuff from the farm, and she's started to do farm to table. So again, working with her on how to grow that, so I wouldn't have to do it per se, but there's also a bakery and a commercial kitchen inside the market where we do things that I have this, we have these concepts to expand and also make it potentially a full year business and create some winter growing. So there's this opportunity here. It is a family run farm, and they're keeping it in their family. I'm not buying land. I'm not that, and I honestly don't want, because I don't know if I want to stay there, but it kind of just, this whole thing manifested, and it kind of came out of the podcast, out of my interactions through the podcast and everything. And it's grown, and I've had time to work with them, kind of do some consulting for them to see if it's a good fit. And it seems like a really good opportunity. So now we're getting down to, we're getting down to some, serious conversations, and, literally launching into the new year, we would be, I'd be starting to do some work to get things prepped for the spring.
And would you move up there? Would that be a farm, or
would have to live in the area, during season, so most likely, yes. That's all to be determined. So we'll see what happens. It's all up in the air right now. But you know what? It's one of those things that I'm just going to ride the wave, and I'm going to see what happens. And if we can work out the details and I can make it happen, great.
Mm-hmm.
Every time I say, I used, and sometimes I'd be like, oh, is it really, do I really want to do this? Or is this really, I'll just go through the motions and it may not work out, but it seems it's one of those things that keeps sticking and keeps evolving in a very positive way. So I'm just like, okay, just,
Right. Well, did you find that, well, first of all, I know that, it was hard to get on that plane. It took you a while to get on that plane and kind of deciding, do I do this? Do I not do this? Is the timing right? Blah, blah, blah. All those things and a million reasons why it wasn't right. And then there you were at the airport. How did that feel? Number one. And then number two, was there anything in the airport or on the airplane on the way home where you could see the change from when you were in the airport before you left?
Once I booked the ticket, I didn't have hesitation. There were things that happened, like my daughter was in a car accident. She was fine, but the car wasn't. Like, all this happened like right before. Obviously, my sister-in-law, there was things, but I didn't let that, none of that made me feel like I don't want to go. There's always a little hesitancy, but I kind of just got on the plane and I'm like, You're just gonna
go and see what happens.
Yeah, and I'm just going to have an experience. And so I didn't look back. It was just looking forward at that point. And I loved every day. Like, I really did. I really felt in the moment. I remember just harvesting olives, and there were a few times like I was very quiet. And one of the guys who speaks mostly Italian, he always liked to hear me just talk in English. And he's like, Jen's not talking, however he said it in Italian. And I'm like, I just want to be. Like, it was just actually so soothing sometimes just to not talk and to be sitting there harvesting olives and to just breathe the air and feel the stillness. It was nice. Or to hear them speaking Italian, They speak so fast. They tell me I speak fast. They spoke fast. And coming home was hard. I mean, I don't know if you heard the end of the podcast, but I broke down.
I did too. While I was riding my bike, I could feel your emotions strongly.
And when I think about that moment, I still, like, I'm tearing up right now. It was like leaving my family.
Yeah.
And I really felt that. But I also felt the love that they gave me. I mean, when I hugged his mom, his mom is 82, the same age as my mom. And, she lost her husband. It was either a year or two ago. John Franco lost his dad. And I could see there's a lonely, she's missing him. I could feel it. There was no conversation about it, but I felt it. But when I hugged her, there was just such this genuine hug, like, just like almost like I was her daughter. Like, that's how it felt, and like she was my mom, and saying goodbye was hard. And even with my friend Helen, it was hard. Her family welcomed me in too, or her husband Vincenzo, who's from there. They've been married, like, I think over 40 years. And her son, who's from, grew up here and now lives there, and he's an architect, and he's trying to kind of build his business there. But just being part of their family dynamic, it was just a weird feeling leaving. It was like leaving home in a weird way.
Yeah. I mean, what it sounds like is that what you've reaffirmed is your ability to make family, to be part of family, to be worthy of family. And again, we're at that age where we've got this transition happening where our blood family is spreading their wings and our relationships are as close as can be, but we also have the opportunity to create extended family that is chosen as well. And you've just reinforced your incredible ability to do that. You know, I mean, you've done it with them and they're going to have a close place in your heart, but you now know you've known it already, but you've reconfirmed for yourself that you can do that over and over again. You know, and I mean, for me, there was so many leavings of all the farms, you know, and what I made peace with was that however short or long or ongoing the relationship did not impact the intense reality of it. You know, every single moment of, you know, the hugging of the mother, every single human interaction was just as real and meaningful and intense and life-changing, no matter if that relationship continued or not. You know, that these hearts were crossing in time and space for reasons we don't even know, and changing us, changing all of us for the better. And then we just bring that forward, you know? So I love that I love that you did it. And I love that you already have a next step. What have you found as a ripple effect within your own family and your friends? Because now you've done something you've talked about doing. You've been on this journey. You've been talking to people all over the world and trying to decide what your next steps are. And now you're at your bridge. And this was part of your bridge. This was getting you across this bridge in a very visible, active, you know, affirmative way. And now you are different because of this experience, because of all of this the last year. And what has been the reaction?
Well, what's been great is the podcast has allowed people to really experience it, you know, because they literally were in the kitchen with us, you know.
Right.
And the reaction to the podcast has been amazing from a lot of people close to me. You know, they just were like, you know, when I talk about it, it's one thing, but when they actually hear the interaction and so much dimension of that, I think that really has resonated with a lot of people. So whatever that really means, like, I don't know, you know, but I think I really was able to connect people to the experience through that podcast. I don't know. I've only been back a few days technically. I don't know. I will see in time how this unfolds, you know, as far as, you know, I really highly encourage people, you know, like even I was talking to Helen, I said to her who lives there, you know, I opened up John Franco to her, you know, and they're an hour away from each other. And and then we went to Rossellini's and had that tour. And these were things that she hadn't done in her own, you know, she's living there. So I think she all of a sudden, so she sent me a video today because they had olives on their property. And she went with her husband to actually watch them turn it into oil. So she sent me a bunch of videos this morning on WhatsApp, and it was like, I think her eyes and looking at things are very different. I did an interview with her and I gave her an opportunity. We talked about everything we did together. And so I'm going to publish that in a few weeks. And again, I've never heard her share. You know, all this time, I didn't even know anything about her husband's past, and he grew up in Palermo. And so we were talking about all this. And I think it even reconnected some people who are there, you know. There's this whole contingent of expats who live there, Americans who live there. And we went for a hike with one of them. And actually her son, who's the architect, has found actually meaningful work working with them, because some of them are trying to move there and they like working with, you know, they enjoy working with an American who is also integrating the history of Sicily into his architecture. So he's like combining both. It's really cool. His work is amazing and it's very sustainable. And so I was talking to them about like, what made you decide you just want to move here and leave like everything, And it was just interesting listening to that and listening to their perspectives and them taking that risk. These are people more our age, who are doing this. I'm like, wow, So I don't know the full impact. I just know that I'm completely like, I think, and I always said this when I would return from my Central American trips, people need to get out there and they need to see how other people live and how other people connect. They need perspective. Because honestly, after you go there and you come back to this country and you see, you see how much we do have.
Right. And the missed opportunities, like the missed opportunities for connection and for public space and for shared community and food, and good, healthy living.
And the importance of fighting for retaining what we have.
Right. And making it better for everyone. Well, it comes up, it hasn't come up in our conversation, which makes sense, but it comes up in general in the public when folks hear that we travel alone as women, that folks are surprised, intrigued, concerned. There's a wide range of reactions for those who haven't had the opportunity to do this yet and to see how incredibly freeing and fabulous it is. So is there anything you can share about your experience as a woman traveling alone?
Okay. That's it.
In Sicily, of all places.
I've had other, I traveled to Belize alone as well when I went to Belize on one of my chocolate things. I've been to a few countries, not completely alone, but traveling to and from alone and kind of being in my own place or whatever. The only thing that I found challenging, and this had nothing to do, I think, with being a woman, was I got to say, when you are in this part of Sicily, knowing the language is important. When I was with Gianfranco and Nino, I kind of had them to help translate, but there wasn't as much of a willingness by people to try to understand or help you out. And I'm not saying they were mean or anything. That wasn't, there's, and I went there and I didn't have time to really educate myself on some Italian. And I almost feel bad about that because I think when I was staying in Marsala, I didn't really go to any restaurants. I really didn't have a lot of time, but I really didn't on purpose because I wanted to avoid that interaction because I didn't want them to be uncomfortable and I didn't want myself to be uncomfortable. Also, they do not take American dollars. And I went to exchange money and I didn't do it in the airport and we had to go to the post office and it took hours and
And they didn't take credit cards?
They took credit cards, but only certain places. Like, so if I went into a small
place, they needed cash.
They didn't, and you needed their cash. They didn't want anything to do with American dollars in these particular areas. I know it's different, probably in Rome and Florence and stuff. People have told me, but most people did not speak English in Marsala, and I felt bad because I feel like I missed out on an experience.
Right. But that's also, I mean, you were there, if you were there longer, you would have approached it more like you were living there.
Yes.
You know what I mean? And then you would have gotten the money, you would have learned some phrases, you made a quick decision to go. So you didn't have those 6 months to prepare,
As far as, I am one, like you do the bike, I am on foot. Like I took, there was one afternoon because it was right on the water and they had these not a boardwalk, but you could walk along the water. And I walked for miles up. And, I'm aware of my surroundings, but I never felt unsafe. And I'm not walking at night in the dark. You do things, you do wise things just like you would do here, Well,
that's what people don't always realize. That I don't think people always realize, if you're not a woman, that the extent of things here in the United States that we do on a daily basis to be safe. And we take that toolbox of skills when we travel. And it's a pretty involved toolbox. especially if we bike or walk or do other things in public, ride public transit. We already have a very established toolbox of how to be safe in public. And I think a lot of us find that we feel sometimes safer in other environments for different reasons. So yeah, so it's not as big a change
No,
as I think some people think. How do you do that alone? I mean,
exactly.
you just use the same precautions you use, and you have all these new freedoms when you're alone as well to make your own decisions about such a wide range of things.
And like even when I went to Costa Rica with Abby a few months ago, I was driving too, and I was driving like in the country, and I was and my Spanish is weak, and she spoke some Spanish, but we're not from Costa Rica, and that was the one thing I was nervous about. Like I was, but honestly, once we got adjusted, once I understood the roads, once I, and not everyone spoke English, but we got by, and I felt extremely comfortable in that country and welcomed in that country, and we were in a diversity of places. We always though assess the surroundings. Don't do, we walked at night and stuff, but we knew where we were. We knew what was safe. What it's just. I think it's just kind of being smart to those things, just like we do here, like you just said.
Right. Well, and also being New Yorkers,
Yeah, probably has something to do with it.
Right. I mean, we're used to being.
I take that for granted.
Right. It's not like a lot of places. You're used to being in public spaces. You're used to riding mass transit. Used to, being around a diversity of people and just figuring things out, and knowing in general also that most people are kind and are willing to be helpful, even if we have a bubble sometimes to just protect our privacy. You're not going to meet nicer people. So, yeah, I love that you did this. And is there any part of your younger self that you felt blossom a little bit on this journey?
I don't know. My younger self. What do you mean by my younger self?
Before kids, before family, your 20s. I know, like I backpacked in Europe when I was 21, so that piece comes out in some of these journeys. I find her again.
No, you see, I didn't do anything like that, and I feel like I'm living all that out now. I didn't do any of things like that. There were always things in my mind, but again, I was on a track. And I didn't really deviate from that track. And I traveled a lot, when I was younger, I traveled for work, and I did travel on my own, but it was very traditional traveling. You go to a hotel. It wasn't like this in any way. This all started when I was, my first trip was Belize, probably several years ago. And I started doing this kind of, more cultural, adventurous farm, agricultural travel, staying in non-traditional places, not hotels and stuff like that. And so I'm kind of living it all out now. Sometimes.
So that first cacao trip was really your life changer.
It was. And I remember booking that trip and saying, what the heck am I doing? Because my kids were young.
Yeah.
And I left them all home, and I set everything up. Like I had, I had everything set up. Planning for these trips is the hardest thing, because you have to do not just work, but household things, kid things. Like, even though my kids are older, I needed to make sure everyone had everything they needed. And then so getting out is hard from that perspective. Once you're on the plane, you're like, oh, okay, But at that time, that Belize trip, they were young, and that was even harder. But
what was the urgency of your need to go on that trip?
I was just I'm trying to remember what was going on. I was embarking on the whole farming concept. I was volunteering. I didn't have my farm yet. And I also just was in this rut from a work perspective. I knew I wanted to change. And I was like, I like chocolate and I like agriculture. So I just started Googling and I was looking more for jobs in those fields. And I happened to come across the trip and I'm like, what better way to get educated about like an area than to maybe, and I just needed to get away. It was February. There was literally a blizzard the morning I drove to Newark Airport behind a plow. It was a blizzard. I don't know how my plane took off. To this day, I do not know how that plane took off. It was like one of the last planes out that day. So, yeah, and two puddle jumpers once I got to Belize, and I was in the middle of a jungle. My first night was in the middle, literally staying in a jungle cabana by
And
myself,
did you have those howling monkeys?
right above me, perched above me. I was
That one, that
alone with a
podcast,
flashlight and a walkie-talkie. I'm
that
not kidding you.
the podcast you have with those
Yeah,
howling monkeys, I just couldn't
that's
stop laughing.
that was the trip. And I remember sitting there that day and I was like, you're having fun. You're having fun. You're having an adventure. This is an adventure of a lifetime. Meanwhile, these growling monsters are outside my yeah. But
It's so funny. Well, do you feel like you would woof again?
yes, I definitely would woof again. I obviously, as you do, you hone your criteria and your questions.
What would you
Um,
change
I'll definitely ask about
besides smoking?
smoking.
Yeah.
I think I need a little like less shared space. Like I know you're very specific about your space.
I love the tiny homes. I've had tiny homes and Airstream trailers and cabins.
Yeah.
And I've been in the house as I guess really just once or twice, but which has been fine. But I love having my own little, and it fulfills my little fantasy too. Like I'd love to live that way. I love that whole
Yep.
world, the whole tiny home world. So to be able to do that and it's this lovely forced simplicity, and you can just sort of see how much you can pare your life down and feel rich. So I love that. I really love that. And I love not having to, like on the farms, I love not having to own it or worry about it or have the vet bills or any of that. I can just live my little farm fantasies and learn things that are hopefully helpful in our changing world in ways I don't really know yet, how it's all going to tie together. But yeah, I really love the tiny homes. And again, I've learned what questions to ask on those because, are there rodents? Is there mold? Is it watertight? Is it, is there air and heat? Is there running water? What about bathrooms? I mean, there's a million questions.
And we take, as an American, we take a lot of that for granted.
Right.
A lot of
Right.
it for granted.
Exactly. And my assumption has always been like, not to get too crazy with questions because it's other human beings. We all have the same needs.
Right.
So the needs are going to be addressed. It's just, again, you find out what become your boundaries.
Yeah.
And it really is a very short list, I think, of what's just like, some people don't want to share a bathroom.
Yeah.
I mean, the bathroom, I've said that before, but that's like the number two, ironically, it's the number two thing that people always say is a deal breaker for them, that they just couldn't do it. They just couldn't do it because too much concern about bathrooms. and in all honesty, after 11 farms, it's a fair concern.
I find I just need some downtime. It's just my personality. Like I am like, I love interacting, but then I just need that downtime
Right.
from people at a certain point.
Yeah.
So that was really helpful about me going to Marsala. And I did.
That's just a great situation that you got to do that.
Yeah. I didn't realize I needed it as much.
Mm-hmm.
But it was just nice to be able to just, have that little few hours of just me, me.
Yeah.
Me and
Right.
just me in a book usually.
Well, I mean, that was what was helpful, and I would tell people it's in my profile, and I would tell them when I would book the farms that I was working. I was working on one or other of the books, and that I needed the time each day to do my photography and to write and to have the time alone. So it kind of built it into my day, and I was able to say, okay, well, when's my chunk?
Yeah. Yeah. So it was an amazing experience. I definitely would do it again. Um, but it definitely just it helped reinforce once again for me. I think it's a great way to see places. Number one, like it's just,
Mhm.
and that's what every
Well,
woofer.
it's the stuff you're interested in
Yeah.
too. Because
Yeah.
people say, well, yeah, but if you're working on the farm 30 hours a week, then you don't have time to do the other things. It's like, yeah, but that's the stuff I like to do.
Exactly.
That's
Yes,
the stuff I would be
absolutely.
doing anyway.
Yes,
You know, I'm
exactly.
visiting
That's
farms.
that's
Right.
where you volunteer, you're like
Right.
spending your hours. No,
Right.
I know. And to me, God, it's what a powerful education for free.
Right.
I know you're putting it, but like,
Right.
hey,
It's a fair barter. It's a fair
yeah,
barter, but you do get like an incredible insider
yes,
experience that you wouldn't get in any other way. Even taking, an immersion trip where, a 3-day immersion trip into some agricultural something other is still so different from being a 6-hour a day farmhand, and actually, like you said, like the when you even just mimicked the feeling of harvesting the olives and seeing the gloves you were wearing in that video, and if that you can't get that without having done those feelings on a daily basis. So
it was amazing. So, I hope to figure out how to bring a little bit of Sicily to America. The feeling that was created.
right.
That's
So would the big thing be community and connection and shared food and being present?
farm to table type of food
Right.
that, and just again the importance of that from John Franco, and how they articulate it in our podcast is really important. It's just that ecosystem that they've created, and the importance of how it's all feeding each other, and how it's ultimately feeding us as humans,
Yeah.
feeding our health. And you know like I don't know if you remember, but he references when he first started farming, it was conventional farming, and he felt like, I don't want to be poisoning people as a farmer.
Yeah, that was, I thought, one of the more powerful lines of the whole thing.
Yes.
When he just said it so, and
Yes.
it's very,
But it was
very
so
quotable.
obvious, and I'm like,
Yeah.
it was so powerful. That's why I used it for the Instagram post, because I'm like, my God, it was one of the most profound things he said, and I just
Right.
like, so all of that is like we were speaking the same language, and it's kind of all of this has been surrounding me.
Yeah.
No matter, I've always just, I'm always trying to figure out how do you tie that back into here.
Right.
How do I bring
Well, but I know in Ireland there were a number of both Irish-based, Ireland-based, and EU-based, what they called schemes that were subsidies or incentives for all of these environmental measures. Did you find that was in play in Italy and Sicily as well? Were those things that he was working with as opportunities that were driving some of the things he was doing?
Not that I was aware of. I mean, we did
Right.
talk about some things, but no,
Mhm.
actually not.
Okay.
No, I don't know much about that from there.
Right. And it could just be it's such a part of their life that it's happening behind the scenes and it wasn't even something he talked about. I don't really know.
I don't know.
I know there's a lot of incentives, and that's part of, again, what can you bring back here without comparable incentives?
I don't think they did not refer to any of that.
Okay. Yeah, I did hear a lot of that in Ireland, so maybe it is different.
Yeah. Unless they just don't have access to it, or maybe Sicily's different, because
Right.
there are differences. So I don't know, and I didn't like.
Yeah.
We did talk about some aspects of that, but they never brought anything up that was being
Right.
accessed or discussed. Yeah.
Well, a final question for you. Do you have Italian heritage?
No, that not that I know of from my family. Andrew does, and my kids obviously do. I don't know where though. I asked him, I'm like, where was your dad and mom from? And he didn't know the answer to that. So I'm curious, but not that I'm aware of. From my side of the family, we're more, Ukraine, Poland, Romania, England,
Right.
stuff like that. So,
Okay. Yeah. So I was wondering if heritage played a part in
no,
any of the,
no.
yeah.
Most of the countries I've traveled to, it doesn't play a part.
Yeah.
We're just,
Well, if there was a dream place for you to go with an agricultural interest that you've always had, where would that be?
it wasn't.
Besides where you've been.
I'd like to see some other parts of Italy now that I've learned. Also, other parts of Sicily. I was mostly on the west side. The whole east side of Sicily, where the volcano is, that's like fertile and a lot of vineyards. I think I would like to learn a little bit more about grapes and the whole vineyard process and
Right.
winemaking and stuff like that. I would like to see the other side of Sicily because it's just so I definitely think that that would be intriguing. Other parts of Italy, definitely, just because it seems like there's so much dimension just within that one country. I don't know yet. I want to go to Australia, but I don't know yet. You know what? So many places seem intriguing to me. Like I could get into almost any place, but as long as
Have you gone on to the other WWOOF sites yet?
Not yet,
Oh,
no.
God. It's just a field day. Everyone I go
Okay,
on.
well,
Like,
you need to
oh,
let me know what's on your agenda.
I don't know. I've got this friend in Tasmania, and I've been talking about going there for years. So,
One of my interviews was with a
oh
guy.
yeah, I remember that.
Yep.
Yeah, I remember that.
And actually, Rose told me a lot about Tasmania. We put an itinerary together for Australia for when I go, and Tasmania was on that itinerary.
Yeah, there's a bunch of, I mean, I just started clicking on them and they all sound great. And so I do have a friend with a small farm there as well. And so I don't know. I mean, that's an idea. We'll see. I think next year I'm going to go back to Ireland and hopefully this will be the first time I'll probably go back to one of my wolf farms. I haven't returned to any of them. So, it's always a challenge. Like, do you go back or do you go forward? So, but I may go back to one. I may go back to Ronan because he's over on the West Coast, and that's where I may go to the Irish immersion school is that area, the Irish speaking area. He's right there. So, and then he's got again, it's that kind of farm, which is the CSA and they deliver to the restaurants and they've got kind of the diversity of things happening. So it's kind of easy to tap into that. And it's very much like a weekly schedule where you're harvesting and you're planting and then you're putting boxes together and you're delivering. And I really like the production schedule and the mix of, kind of a business angle and a nonprofit angle. I like that mix. They have local volunteers and woofers from around the world. So it's a nice model. It's kind of it sounds similar to what you were doing in a way. So I don't know. Then there's a part of me that feels like I might be done with woofing. I don't like it's time to, it's hard. I mean, it's hard. It's hard. And like, it's the whole thing, the living and all of it. It's incredible, but it's also hard.
It is. It definitely was.
It's hard. It's hard, socially and physically, and the physical part isn't a problem for me yet. But, again, we're used to running our own show.
Oh,
so
yeah.
It's a little hard to kind of come in and be part. It's humbling. It's very humbling to be part of just a group working on the farm and to find your place within that farm. And it sounds like you had a particularly good experience by being able to bring that agritourism expertise, to the table. So I don't know. We'll see. And then all the other elements, all the other elements too, with the transportation and the language and, it's
a lot of dimension to it.
Yeah, it's super, but I am getting itchy again already.
I figured.
Yeah. So you come home and you try to replicate it and nothing really replicates it, and I have gone to some local farms, I did woof at some local farms here in Georgia, but, I don't know, you get the itch again.
Yeah, and that's what makes it special, I guess, it literally does take you out of your world and puts you in somebody else's world almost.
Well, but it is your world. That's the thing. I mean, it's that feeling of there are so many ways to live a life. And we're at that bridge and we get to decide what is our life going to look like moving forward. And we can live different chapters and different lives. You know, we can, and these opportunities exist and other people are doing it. That's the more you spend in that sort of solo travel, part of social media and everything else, the more you see there's just so much to choose from. So I love that. I love that the Massachusetts thing looks like it's working out for you.
Yes.
So,
I will keep you posted on that.
Do you feel like you're back with the blog now? I mean, the podcast? Refreshed and renewed?
I miss it and I love doing it. And it feels so good when I'm doing it. I just have to get into a new routine with it and see what kind of, every week is still hard.
Right. Well, maybe it's more natural, like
yes,
when you feel that you have.
I'm going to see how it takes. But yes, when I do it, and I got 2 interviews from that trip. And then, I kind of want to see, where do I want to go with it?
Yeah.
There's a lot I also want to explore with food access right now, because we're struggling right now as a country. And I think that there's so much I want to explore with that right now. So I have a few people that I've spoken to lined up to kind of have some conversations, but I'll get there. Anything from the Ireland, your
citizenship?
Yes, that's it.
Yeah, I'm still waiting. Okay. I'm still waiting. It's been like a year and a half and I'm still waiting. So yeah, just one day at a time. But back to the just briefly about the food access thing, I remind myself, I started growing 9/11. So it was 9/11, 2001. That's what got me into it, just realizing that I needed to have some semblance of control in an uncontrollable world. And here we are all these years later. And, I think many of us thought we'd be farther along on these issues. And the problems are about to escalate, of course. And I remind myself that we've been prepared. Like, that's what we've been training for. Like, we have all been, those of us who have been just growing and learning and connecting and reaching out and dedicating time and energy and interest and grow and expanding our knowledge base and our passion, have been preparing for now.
Agreed. That's a very good observation and statement to make, because
so instead of feeling helpless or useless, I think we're needed now more than ever. So I love that you're looking at, food access options. And I've got the food pantry garden tomorrow morning, and I'd love to see those kinds of things all over the United States. It wouldn't be hard to add them. And it's not always about the food, it's about the dignity and it's about the connection. That's the big thing to realize. It's about connecting as humans, and humans often connect over food, but it's a bigger story. So I think we're exactly where we need to be.
Agreed.
Yeah.
I just want to wrap by saying that, you personally and your books inspired me to do this. I kind of had them in my mind. I had you and our interview in my mind and all of our discussions off interview. Your books are in Sicily with Helen. I gave her she's the one I had bought the copies for, so she has them. So they're in Terracini, Sicily.
That's so cool.
So you've been an inspiration to this whole experience. And like I said, you were in my mind when I was making decisions about, do I stay there, do I not? And just, and being in the moment and really being in those moments of interaction, at that dinner table, at that lunch table, in that olive field. Like, a lot of your words resonated throughout this whole.
Well, I love to hear that. And I love to see, again, I think we're all making ripple effects, on each other. and you as well, and all of your podcasts, which I've listened to all while I was farming in those books. And I think there's a lot of us working individually, and many connections have already been made, but maybe as we move forward into the new year, these connections can start to get tighter and we can grow into a real movement again. I know we've been movements on and off, but maybe it's time for a new one. So thank you for all you do.
Thank you, Pattie.
I hope our AgriTourist podcast prompts you to think more about where your food comes from, whether it be your vegetables, fruits, meats, and even those sweet treats. Don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast with someone you think may truly benefit from or be inspired by it. Visit us at agra-tourist.com. Until next time.